My name is Mira Okafor, and I was never supposed to be the one they sent to Karshek-9. Karshek-9 is what the star charts call a Class-10 gravity world. That means the pull of that planet is 10 times stronger than anything a normal body should survive for long. It crushes bone. It flattens lungs. It has a reputation across 100 systems, and that reputation is simple. Nobody beats it. I had heard the stories since I was a cadet. The Valari war champion Thesek Ro, a warrior built like a small mountain, lasted 6 hours before his own medical team pulled him out, his legs no longer able to hold his weight. The Ondrathi survey team, 4 of the calmest, most disciplined scientists in the fleet, turned back after 2 days, when their equipment and their bodies both began to fail. Even the Grozny Combine, famous for engineering armor that could survive a ship crash, sent their best armored scout down, and he came back saying only one thing: it does not forgive mistakes. So when the Interstellar Survey Council called my name for the Karshek-9 assignment, I remember the silence in the room. Nobody clapped. Nobody wished me luck. A few people actually laughed, quietly, like they thought it was some kind of joke that hadn't been explained yet. I was not a war hero. I was not from a strong-bodied species built for battle. I was a junior field surveyor, the kind of person usually sent to catalog rocks and measure weather patterns on quiet, boring planets. My superiors picked me because everyone else had already said no, and someone had to go, and I happened to be the one still standing in the room when they needed a name. I said yes. I did not say yes because I was brave. I said yes because I come from a small farming town in Nigeria, where my grandmother used to say that a task is not finished by the strongest person, but by the person who keeps showing up. The shuttle that took me down to Karshek-9 was quiet, except for the pilot, a Voss engineer named Talon, who kept glancing at me like I was a strange kind of cargo. "You know the numbers," Talon said. "Nobody has lasted more than 3 days on the surface. Most don't last 3 hours." "I know," I said. "You don't seem worried." I looked out the window at the planet growing larger, a swirl of deep green and gray under thick clouds. "I'm worried," I said. "I'm just not going to let it stop me from trying." Selen didn't say anything else after that. The moment the shuttle doors opened, the gravity hit me like a heavy hand pressing down on my shoulders, my chest, my knees. My suit's systems whirred loudly, working hard to keep my joints from locking. My first breath felt like breathing through a straw with someone sitting on my ribs. But I did not fall. I want to be honest here, because this is not a story about magic powers or secret strength. I did not suddenly become a superhero. What happened was smaller than that, and in some ways stranger. My body, the ordinary body of an ordinary human woman, simply adjusted. Slowly, painfully, but it adjusted. See, Earth is not a soft planet either. Humans evolved carrying loads, walking long distances, working fields, climbing mountains, lifting things heavier than we probably should. Our bones are dense. Our hearts are strong pumps built to push blood against gravity every single day of our lives. None of that makes us special warriors. It just means our bodies already knew, in some small way, how to fight against weight. I took my first step on Karshek-9, and it felt like lifting my leg through wet sand. I took a second step, then a third. By the 10th step, my legs had found a strange, heavy rhythm, like walking through water at the bottom of a pool. Above me, in orbit, the monitoring team watched through my suit's cameras. I could hear them talking, not always realizing my comm line was still open. "She's still moving," one voice said, surprised. "Thesek Ro was down inside 20 minutes, another voice said. "She's already past that." I didn't respond. I just kept walking toward the research outpost, a small structure left behind by the Ondrathi team before they gave up. My job was simple on paper: reach the outpost, restart its systems, and collect 2 weeks of data that the planet's harsh environment had refused to let anyone gather before. The land itself seemed built to test whoever walked on it. There was a ridge halfway to the outpost, not particularly tall, but steep enough that every step required pushing my full weight uphill against gravity, 10 times stronger than home. 3 separate elite teams had turned back at that ridge. I remember reading that in the mission briefing, and feeling my stomach tighten. When I reached the bottom of the ridge, I stopped and looked up at it for a long moment. My legs already ached in a deep, tired way. My chest felt tight with every breath. I thought about my grandmother's garden, about carrying buckets of water up the hill behind her house when I was a child, about how my legs used to shake by the time I reached the top, and how I always made it anyway, one slow step after another. I started climbing. It took me almost 2 hours to reach the top of that ridge, a distance that would have taken 10 minutes on a normal world. My suit's systems beeped warnings about muscle strain. My heart rate climbed higher than it should have. But I kept my eyes on the top of the ridge, and I kept moving. When I finally reached the top, I heard someone on the comm line say, quietly, "That's not possible." I allowed myself a small, tired smile. "It's possible," I said. "It's just slow." The voice on the other end belonged to a Trontrothy scientist named Beth Corvain, one of the researchers who had originally tried and failed to reach the outpost. She had stayed on to monitor my mission, mostly, I think, because she didn't believe I would get far. "How are you still standing?" she asked. "I'm not standing much," I said, sitting down carefully on a flat rock to rest my legs. "I'm mostly just refusing to stop." I could hear something change in her voice after that, something that sounded like the beginning of respect. The rest of that first day was a slow, careful walk toward the outpost. I stopped often. I drank water even when I didn't feel thirsty, because my suit reminded me that dehydration happens faster under heavy gravity. I ate small amounts of food to keep my strength steady, instead of spiking and crashing. I did not run. I did not try to prove anything with speed or force. I moved like someone who understood that the planet was stronger than me, and that the only way to beat something stronger than you is to never let it convince you to quit. By the time I reached the outpost, the sun of that system was setting behind thick clouds, turning the sky a deep orange-gray. I remember standing in front of the outpost's heavy door, my legs shaking, my whole body sore in ways I had never felt before, and I remember laughing softly to myself, because I had made it. Inside the outpost, the air recyclers hummed weakly back to life as I restarted the systems one by one. The gravity inside the structure was slightly reduced by the outpost's old stabilizers, just enough to let my body finally rest. That night, lying on a narrow cot designed for a species much smaller than me, I listened to the wind outside, a low, heavy sound, like the whole planet breathing. The monitoring team above had grown quieter, more careful in how they spoke to me now. I think they had stopped expecting me to fail at any moment, and started, cautiously, expecting me to succeed. On the second day, the real test came. A storm rolled across the region where the outpost stood, a storm made heavier and more dangerous by the planet's gravity. Wind on Karshek-9 does not simply blow, it presses. It pushes with a weight that had knocked over armored scouts twice my size in past missions. I watched the storm approaching on the outpost's old sensors, dark clouds thick with charged particles, moving toward the ridge I had just climbed. "You need to shelter in place," Beth's voice said over the comm, tense. "That storm broke the Grozny scouts' armor plating last year. It's not something you walk through." I looked at the sensor readings, then at the outpost's damaged antenna array outside, the one piece of equipment I still needed to fix in order to send the collected data back to the fleet. Without it, this entire mission, everything I had already survived, would mean nothing. The data would stay trapped here, useless. I made my decision carefully, not out of pride, but out of practicality. "I need 6 minutes outside to fix the antenna," I said. "If I wait for the storm to pass, we lose the transmission window, and the whole mission fails." 6 minutes in that wind could kill you, Beth said. "I know," I said. "But if I don't try, the mission definitely fails. If I do try, there's a chance it doesn't." There was a long pause. Then Beth said, quietly, "Be careful. Please." I stepped outside into wind that felt like a giant hand shoving against my entire body. I dropped low, using the outpost's outer wall for support, moving hand over hand toward the antenna mount. Every gust threatened to tear my footing away from the ground. My suit's warnings blared constantly, but I forced myself to focus only on the next handhold, the next bolt, the next small task. It took me nearly 9 minutes instead of 6, minutes that felt impossibly long, my arms burning, my ears filled with the roar of wind and static. But I tightened the final connection just as the storm's strongest wave hit, and I pulled myself back inside the outpost seconds before a piece of loose debris slammed into the spot where I had been standing. Inside, I sat on the floor, breathing hard, my hands shaking, and I laughed, a tired, relieved laugh, because I was alive, and the antenna was fixed. Transmission signal confirmed, a voice said from orbit, sounding almost stunned. Data is coming through, all of it. Over the next several days, I completed the survey work that no one else had managed to finish. I did not do it quickly, I did not do it without pain, but I did it steadily, one careful task after another, resting when I needed to rest, pushing forward when I needed to push forward. By the time the recovery shuttle came to bring me home, I had spent 11 days on a planet that had defeated the galaxy's most celebrated champions in a matter of hours. When I boarded the shuttle, Talon was waiting, along with Beth, who had traveled down personally to meet me. Neither of them said anything about how impossible it had seemed. Instead, Beth simply looked at me for a long moment and said, "We were wrong about what strength looks like." I shook my head, still tired, still sore, but smiling. "You weren't wrong," I said. "You just hadn't seen it before." Word of what happened on Karshek 9 spread quickly after that. Other species began asking questions about humans, about our strange, ordinary-looking bodies that seemed to hide something the rest of the galaxy hadn't expected. Some called me a hero. Some called it luck. I never fully agreed with either. What I know is this: I did not defeat Karshek 9 with strength no one else had. I defeated it because I refused to stop moving, one small step at a time, even when every part of that planet was built to make me quit. And maybe that is the real reason humans are remembered. Not because we are the strongest, or the fastest, or the most powerful, but because when everyone else stops, we keep walking.